It's been a long time I haven't practiced reading, so today I decided to read chapter 2 of the book Heidi. This is a bilingual book, and chapter 2 is At Home with Grandfather. As soon as Deet had disappeared, the old man went back to his bench, and there he remained seated, staring on the ground without uttering a sound, while thick curls of smoke floated upward from his pipe. Heidi, meanwhile, was enjoying herself in her new surroundings. She looked about till she found a shed, built against the hut, where the goats were kept. She continued her search and presently came to the fir trees behind the hut. A strong breeze was blowing through them, and there was a rushing and roaring in their topmost branches. Heidi stood still and listened. She went on again to the farther corner of the hut, and so round to where her grandfather was sitting, seeing that he was in exactly the same position as when she left him. She went and placed herself in front of the old man, and putting her hands behind her back, stood and gazed at him. Her grandfather looked up, and as she continued standing there without moving, "What is it you want?" he asked. "I want to see what you have inside the house." "Come then, bring your bundle of clothes in with you." "I shan't want them any more," was her prompt answer. "Why shall you not want them any more?" "Because I want to go about like the goats with their thin, light legs." "Well, you can do so if you like, but bring the things in. We must put them in the cupboard." The old man now opened the door, and Heidi stepped inside after him. She found herself in a good-sized room which covered the whole ground floor of the hut. A table and a chair were the only furniture. In one corner stood the grandfather's bed. In another was the hearth with a large kettle hanging above it, and on the further side was a large door in the wall. This was the cupboard. Heidi, as soon as it was opened, ran quickly forward and thrust in her bundle of clothes as far back behind her grandfather's things as possible, so that they might not easily be found again. She then looked carefully around the room and asked, "Where am I to sleep, grandfather?" "Wherever you like," he answered. Heidi was delighted, and began at once to examine all the nooks and corners to find out where it would be pleasantest to sleep. In the corner near her grandfather's bed, she saw a short ladder against the wall. Up she climbed and found herself in the hay loft. There lay a large heap of fresh, sweet-smelling hay, while through the round window in the wall she could see right down the valley. "I shall sleep up here, grandfather. It's lovely up here." "Oh, I know all about it. I think we might have something to eat first. What do you think?" "Yes, I think so too." Then he went up to the hearth, pushed the big kettle aside, and drew forward the little one that was hanging on the chain, and seating himself on the round-topped, three-legged stool before the fire, blew it up into a clear, bright flame. The kettle soon began to boil, and meanwhile the old man held a large piece of cheese on a long iron fork over the fire, turning it around and round till it was toasted a nice golden yellow color on each side. Heidi watched all that was going on with eager curiosity. Suddenly, some new idea seemed to come into her head, for she turned around to the cupboard and then began going busily backwards and forwards. Presently, the grandfather got up and came to the table with a jug and a cheese, and there he saw it already tidily laid with the round loaf and two plates and 2 knives, each in its right place, for Heidi had taken exact notes that morning of all that there was in the cupboard, and she knew which things would be wanted for their meal. She was dragging the 3-legged stool up to the table, sat herself down upon it. Well, you have managed to find a seat for yourself. With that, he stood up, filled the bowl with milk, and placing it on the chair, pushed it in front of Heidi on her little 3-legged stool, so that she now had a table to herself. Then he brought her a large slice of bread and a piece of the golden cheese, and told her to eat. After which he went and sat down on the corner of the table and began his own meal. Heidi lifted the bowl with both hands and drank without pause till it was empty. But the thirst of all her long hot journey had returned upon her. Was the milk nice? Asked her grandfather. I never drank any so good before. Then you must have some more. And the old man filled her bowl again to the brim and set it before the child, who was now hungrily beginning her bread, having first breaded with the cheese, which after being toasted with was soft as butter. The meal being over, the grandfather went outside to put the goat shed in order, and Heidi watched with interest while he first swept it out, and then put fresh straw for the goats to sleep upon. Then he went to the little well shed, and there he cut some long round sticks and a small round board. In this he bored some holes and stuck the sticks into them, and there, as if made by magic, was a 3-legged stool just like her grandfather's, only higher. Heidi stood and looked at it, speechless with astonishment. What do you think that is? Asked her grandfather. It's my stool, and it was made all of a minute, said the child, still lost in wonder and admiration. She understands what she sees. Her eyes are in the right place, remarked the grandfather to himself as he continued his way around the hut, mending or clearing away wherever work of the kind was needed. Heidi followed him step by step, her eyes attentively taking in all that he did, and everything that she saw was a fresh source of pleasure to her. And so the time passed happily on till evening. Then the wind began to roar louder than ever through the old fir trees. Heidi listened with delight to the sound, and it filled her heart so full of gladness that she skipped and danced round the old trees, as if some unheard of joy had come to her. The grandfather stood and watched her from the shed. Suddenly, a shrill whistle was heard. Heidi paused in her dancing, and the grandfather came out. Down from the heights above the goats came springing one after another, with Peter in their midst. Heidi sprang forward with a cry of joy and rushed among the flock, greeting first one and then another of her old friends of the morning. As they neared the hut of the goats, the goats stood still, and then 2 of their number, 2 beautiful slender animals, one white and one brown, ran forward to where the grandfather was standing and began licking his hands. For he was holding a little salt, which he always had ready for his goats on their return home. Peter disappeared with the remainder of his flock. Heidi tenderly stroked the goats in turn, running first to one side of them and then the other, and jumping about in her glee at the pretty little animals. Are they ours, grandfather? Are they both ours? Are you going to put them in the shed? Will they always stay with us? Heidi's question came tumbling out one after the other, so that her grandfather had only time to answer each of them with yes, yes. When the goats had finished licking up the salt, her grandfather told her to go and fetch her bowl and the bread. Heidi obeyed and was soon back again. The grandfather milked the white goat and filled her basin, and then breaking off a piece of bread. Now eat your supper, and then go up to bed. I must go and shut up the goats, so be off and sleep well. Good night, grandfather. Good night. What are their names, grandfather? She called out as she ran after his retreating figure and the goats. The white one is named Little Swan. The brown one is Little Bear. Good night, Little Swan. Good night, Little Bear. She called again at the top of her voice, for they were already inside the shed. Then she went indoors and climbed up to her bed, where she was soon lying as sweetly and soundly asleep as any young princess on her couch of silk. Not long after, the grandfather also went to bed, for he was up every morning at sunrise, and the sun came climbing up over the mountains at a very early hour during these summer months. During the night, the wind came howling and wailing down the chimney, and it rained with such fury among the old fir trees that here and there a branch was snapped and fell. In the middle of the night, the old man got up. The child will be frightened, he murmured half aloud. He mounted the ladder and went and stood by the child's bed. The moonlight was falling through the round window, straight onto Heidi's bed. She lay under the heavy coverlid, her rosy cheeks still asleep, her head peacefully resting on her little round arm, and with a happy expression on her baby face, as if dreaming of something pleasant. The old man stood looking down on the sleeping child until the moon disappeared behind the clouds and he could see no more. Then he went back to bed. And that's the end of chapter 2. The next chapter will be Out with the Goats. So, see ya.